Hello, Mr. Kevin William.
That's right.
You've been in many a band.
Many bands, yeah. I've done quite my time.
Written many a song.
I've written a lot of songs, yeah.
Done many a tour.
Done many a tour. Released many a record. Yeah.
When did it all start, Steve?
I go back to the beginning.
Yeah. When did you kind of get
time.
interested in music and?
That's a good question actually, because it sort of happened like overnight. It was a weird thing. I was like, 1 minute I was into radio controlled cars.
Yeah. As we both are.
And what age was that?
That was like sort of 12, 13, around that age. And then I was really into that for like a couple of years. I was kind of like, I just love radio controlled cars. And then like woke up one morning, it was literally like that sort of thing, and I was just like, I like music. It was just like that, and I was just like, and then all of a sudden it was just like, I want to listen to loads of music, and then I just went out and spent pocket money, as you do at that age, down at our price or whatever, and I'd buy whatever I could buy, and because I didn't know much, I was like, it was just like, I heard things.
You bought
like,
Cliff Richard and the Young Ones, didn't you?
Oh, the first one was definitely quite an embarrassing one, but they all are. But never mind. But that was way back when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? Like I think it was like, actually it wasn't that bad. It was like, I think it was like Tiger Feet by Mud or something.
Okay.
Like 7-inch. Do you know what I mean? But I think it was literally because I heard the song on the radio and I said, Mum, I like that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I had my family was not really very musical. It's like, apart from my dad, who like secretly was like massively into music, but he kind of it was like he hid it away. He would listen to it in his little office. Yeah, but he was like big Elvis, big Beatles. Buddy Holly was his man. Buddy Holly was like the dude for him.
Yeah,
and he was like. But he would play that sort of stuff on a Sunday, like when we're all at home, and you'd put it on, and you'd have a little boogie in the living room. And we used to laugh a bit, you know what I mean? But it was like, there was hardly any music in the house in that sense. My mum used to like to play a bit of organ, piano, and that was about it. And then, so we'll say one day it was just like, I literally was like, I love music, I want to hear loads of it, and I just started basically seeing what I could buy and what I could find, and I think like my first big sort of band that I really liked was like Simple Minds or something. Just when they were just for that sort of stadium phase, and I got really into them, and then it just sort of went from there, and then it got more kind of like sort of not less commercial, I guess is the word, as I went on. So it was like literally Simple Minds, U2, those are the big obvious ones, and then it was like funny, it just went from that into like Sisters of Mercy. Do you know what I mean? It was like that. It was kind of like,
what made you think, I wonder whether there's something else? Did you kind of get fed up with it, or it wasn't scratching the itch that you had, or
there was I was listening to that pretty, like, I was like Simple Minds, U2, I mean even like sort of Peter Gabriel, that sort of stuff was like kind of around for about a couple of years, and then it suddenly was just like, and then basically I met through people at school, kids at school, and especially a friend who's still my best mate. He was like literally like my sort of I guess my sort of sensei of music. You know what I mean? He was like, because I was kind of like he was like a year above me anyway, and it was like. He was like, he was like the cool kid for me. He was like the kid at school who was just like, I want to be like him. And then we got really good mates, and it was basically through, like, I would say, do you like this band? Do you like this band? And he was just like, and we would like go into town, and I'd buy some records, and he was like, what have you bought? And I would like show him, and he would just kind of, he'd go, oh cool, but you could see he'd be going, those are so cool. And I was like, I could sense that, and I was like, so what have you bought? And he'd be like, I've got the Gay Bikers and Acid 12-inch, and I was like, dude, I don't even know what that is, but that sounds amazing. Do you know what I mean? And then he would just do me tapes, like as you did back then. He'd be like, just mixtapes, and he'd be like, feed me this stuff. And then I think it was like, I went through this whole sort of like real kind of, because Bedford, where I grew up in, was very heavily a goth town in terms of like music. Was like, it was a big thing there. So you couldn't avoid it. It was like you were in Sister Mercy, Mission, Fields and Nephilim, all that stuff. It was just there. It was ever present. you'd go to certain pubs and everyone would be into that sort of music. So you would kind of get all that, and you go to local little gigs that were kind of like those sort of bands.
Yeah.
And then one day I was at school, and like sort of my friend again, he kind of like, he just came up and he was like, he gave me his tape, he goes, you should check this out, and it was Black Flag and Minor Threat, and I was like, literally my head exploded.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember like I used to cycle to school and have it on my Walkman, and it was like, this is something else, do you know what I mean? And it was like, and then that all came, and it just came quick, like there was so much there, and because he was buying all this stuff, and he was even getting stuff sent to him, tape trading from the States from people.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And and it was like, and then skateboarding happened with that, because the two went hand in hand.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The music and that was part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you kind of like all of a sudden got this huge new world of like, I'm into skateboarding, and then there's this whole sort of scene around that music scene, and it was like, it was just honestly like an amazing
It's kind of like a bubble of community, and you just suddenly go
it's
through
exactly
the wall.
it
It's
is.
like,
but the thing is with that bubble was so small then. I mean, people think of skateboarding so like every day now, but then it wasn't. If you skateboarded, it was like, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? It was weird. It was still kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then the music we listened to was even weirder. So it was like really inaccessible. It was all American bands, underground bands. So you had to really find it. You couldn't get it in any record shops. You'd have to order it, or if you were lucky, you know, a local shop might even have something, but it would be the kind of like easier stuff to find. So it was almost like a kind of quest where you're like, the more you could get, the better, like the more kind of like cooler you were, or like you just sort of, it's sort of like, it was like a what do you call it, like an addiction. You couldn't not have more stuff. You had to have it, and it was like, it was like literally like 3 or 4 years of just heaven. Do you know what I mean? It was like, go to skate parks, listen to music, you know, and it was like, just, what more do you want when you're that age? Do you know what I mean? It was all like really like energy, all about energy. Do you know what I mean? You didn't listen to anything that didn't have like loads of aggression and energy. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, it was like a bit of metal in there, and there was like all sort of that stuff. But yeah, it was like this real kind of like community of just few people that knew about it, and it was like really exciting. Do you know what I mean?
When did that kind of flip from consuming music to then creating it?
Well, so then I was still at school, and there was like, the school I went to was, you know, very well funded. It was a private school, and they had basically a huge like design technology department that you could do metal work, woodwork. I mean, most schools used to have them, but they don't have them anymore. But this was like, you could literally do anything there. They had like every piece of equipment ever. And so I chose to do that as a topic, and then they were like, you basically were like, well, you get to build something. It takes a year, but you build something. Choose something you want, that you really like, and you want.
Did they have set projects that you?
Yeah, you could do anything you want.
So you go through the catalogue and say, I'm going to do that.
No, it wasn't even catalogue. It's like, what do you want to build?
Oh, right.
You design it, or you make, you know, and you build it. And of course, I just went, I want to build a guitar. That'd be cool, because I saw someone else doing it, and it like a year above, and I was like, that'll be cool. Do you know what I mean? I didn't even play guitar at the time. I just like, I want to build one, and then I'll learn it or whatever. And of course, my dad being a guy who was very hands-on, very, very clever at learning and doing stuff.
Sort of self-starter.
Yeah, I mean, he was electrical engineer, so he was like, you know, he had one of those brains, but he was like, he loved to build stuff as well. So when I was doing this, he was like, oh, I'm going to get involved in this, and like we bought this book and we did it together. So it was like a real cool thing that we did together, and built this guitar. And then it was like, I better learn to play it now. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, so I just did that in that sort of punk style, like let's learn some chords and get going. And then within 5 minutes, I was doing a little crappy band, whatever, with this guitar that did work, and it sounded quite good. I mean, you know, it wasn't the best thing in the world, but it did the job. Stick a load of stickers on it, and you're good, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? And then that was it. That was the trajectory. Then I was on that. I was going, and it was like everything was about playing guitar, skateboarding, and just like doing that. That was it. And
you in the little band that you started, was that friends from the kind of skatey?
It was weird. It was that guy I told you I was at school with. It was with him, and then it was like a guy I worked with. I had a Saturday job at McDonald's, and I met a guy there who was like kind of a bit crazy. He was a bit older. He was a bit crazy, and he was like in the same. He was like, have you heard? Do you like the Circle Jerks? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh my god. And he was like, and then that was it. And then I was like, well, look, do you want to be in this band? And he was like, yeah. And he sung. And then there was a guy at school that we knew who played drums, kind of not very well, but good enough, And then he had a house. We used to rehearse in the top of his. He had like one of these really old Georgian houses, so you could look in his bedroom right at the top, so no one could hear.
Oh, okay.
We used to just go up there and literally just like make music till we wanted to, and then it was all it was all really innocent and just sort of fun.
Did you ever get into recording at that point, or?
Yeah, that a little bit late, slightly a bit later, because there was we used to do these, like, we even did like crappy gigs like in his front garden and stuff, when there was like a little river festival on, we just run outside and put the amps in and play, and then of course a crowd would come.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, everyone's like, what is it? It was probably the worst thing I've ever heard, but like looking back on it, it was just like, it was really like punk, do you know what I mean? Because it was like people, and then I think the police came and like said, turn it down, you know what I mean? It was that sort of thing. Yeah, but it was just, hey, that was that was an exciting thing that happened. It was like we did a gig.
Well, and you see straight away, you see a reaction.
Yeah.
And it's better than the fear that builds up before your first gig, which turns into this massive thing. You just kind of all pile down there and go.
We were actually just rehearsing in his bedroom. Someone's like, there's this river festival going outside. It was massive. River Festival in Bedford was like 250,000 people. It's like the biggest sort of like 2-day festivals. I think it's only second to Notting Hill Carnival or something.
Oh wow!
So it was like a lot of people, and we were just like, let's do it. And we literally ran downstairs and did it, and then it was like, and then we ran back upstairs after we'd been told off, and we were like
feeling so pumped.
Yeah, but I felt it felt really good. Do you know what I mean? Because there was no nerves in it, and it was like, I mean, you look back on things with rose-tinted spectacles quite a lot, but that one I remember, like that was just really fun. Do you know what I mean? And then
when did you get into kind of doing gigs at venues?
Then we did. We didn't really, because we were too young. That's the thing.
How old were you?
We were like 15.
Right.
It was like 15, 16 oldest, I think, and that was it. And it was like, we were just too young. We didn't know people to get gigs. But there was a guy, and there was a local hardcore punk band called Twerp.
Right.
And they had this big black Jamaican guy called Junior, who was like awesome. He was like the dude, and he was like, they used to play this Bad Brain style hardcore, and he was like, they were really good. They were kind of like local sort of like heroes. And then this other guy called Al was in this band. He was like kind of our sort of gateway to all this music as well, because he would have loads of people in the States that he would like trade with, and but it was like they saw us and they saw like, these are our little proteges, do you know what I mean? And they said, he came to us one day and like goes, do you want to do some recording? And we were like, yeah. And he was like, so he took us to this little, it wasn't even a studio, I don't think. It was like, I think it was like literally a room, and they put an 8-track Fostex or whatever, and then just recorded us. And it was like, that was it. That was like, that was a demo that we did, and it was like, I mean, I don't even know if I still have it. I can remember doing it, but I don't remember how it sounded. It probably sounded awful, but it was like, that was like, wow, it's like someone actually likes us. Do you know what I mean? Admittedly, it was him, but it was like they were trying to sort of encourage us. Do you know what I mean? And then that all fell apart pretty quickly, because I think the guy that was the singer, he got into trouble with the law, and I think he ended up in jail. Actually, I think he got done for arson.
Oh
yeah, actually, he was a character. He was a very angry guy. Do you know what I mean? He was a nice guy, but he had a bit of a rough upbringing. I think he just sort of, he couldn't control his emotions sometimes. So that kind of finished because of that. And then me and Andrew, the guy, my best mate, we started something else, which is a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional. And
what made it a bit more polished and professional?
Because we learned our instruments. I learned to play better, and we got a guy who could play drums really well, and then there was another guy who played bass like properly, and and it all started. It was like an actual proper band. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then we did a proper demo, and we did proper gigs with that. admittedly only locally, but we would support a lot of the like local, like the sort of bands coming in town. I used to put them, I used to ring them up and try and book them as well, so we could get our own gigs. Oh, wow. You know, like a lot of those are still my friends today.
And this is still like 16, 17, around there?
Yeah. It was around that time. Yeah, I was still at school, and well, I might have even just left and just gone to start at art college, and that was it. But yeah, I used to like, well, I like all these bands. They don't come and play here. Let me ring them up. I didn't care. Do you know what I mean? And that's just a time when you could literally go. You'd find someone and go, "What's their phone number for the singer?" You know what I mean? And it's like, and I'd ring them up, and they'll be at home like, "I'm Kevin. I'm from Bedford. I like a band. Do you want to come and play?" And of course, like a couple of them came, and then we got really good turnouts, and then they told other people, "This is a good place to play because like loads of people turn up." So then I would call people up and go, "Oh, I've heard about you. Yeah, we like," and they were like, "Yeah, we'd like to come and play." Like,
so there was a bit of a buzz going.
Alex Newport, who like was in that band Fudge Tunnel, who's now like famous producer at the Drive-In, lives in America, blah blah. He was one of them. He was like, "Yeah, I've heard about your band. Yeah, we'll come and play." And it was like, and that was like. So I was doing all these like kind of, I was almost like promoting at that age as well. Just
cool. Inadvertently fell into it because you had to we wanted to play gigs, so that was how you did it, because you didn't have any other way of doing it, because no one would put you on, because there wasn't anyone to put you on with. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. And were you always the kind of person that wouldn't kind of shrink back from approaching people?
No, I loved it.
Okay.
I loved.
So it's that.
It was like, it was like me. It was like these people were like kind of they were my peers, but they were like my heroes as well. And they were like, I just really looked up to them, and they weren't well known. Apart from a couple of them were like kind of, had been an enemy a couple of times, or they had a bit of a name within the scene. Yeah. But it was like a lot of those bands were not known, but they were like my kind of like heroes, and I was like, it was really cool to speak to them and know them and put them on, and so I was up for it. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and it was as I say, some of them are still good friends today from that exact time, which is really nice actually.
And it's nice to kind of break that. So this is a record that I've listened to, and now I'm talking to the guy on the phone, and he's a human being. Yeah, because a lot of those records had their phone numbers on. Really? The 7-inches would all be like contact address and a phone number. It would be like, that's how because that's how it all worked. You see, because there was no internet, there was no, I don't know, they didn't have managers or booking agencies. It was all done through this network. So there was always an address or a phone number to call. It was quite cool. You know what I mean?
That's wicked.
I know. So it's really helpful. But and then so I did that, and that was like literally when I was still at college, and then I went to university, and then it was like obviously a lot of my friends and everything around the town, we all kind of went off to university and blah blah blah.
What did you do?
I ended up doing industrial design not by choice, but by a sort of default thing that happened.
Clearing.
Which is another long story. Yeah, it was something I didn't want to do, but I ended up doing it.
And you didn't enjoy it?
It was all right. It was okay. It was interesting, but I knew in my heart I didn't want to do it. It was just like I just felt that I needed to go to university and do something. Do you know what I mean? Because there was enough. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
You didn't want to work in McDonald's?
Well, no. Definitely, that was definitely a no-no.
And so how did the music kind of, you were doing this thing at university that you weren't really invested in? Yeah, but obviously my mind was like elsewhere with music. I was like going to gigs, but I was still skating heavily at that time. Right. And I was going, where did you go to uni?
I went to university, funny enough, in Hertfordshire, but it was like in St Albans, a campus, and there was a big skate ramp in St Albans. Okay. And it was like I used to go after like I'd literally walk over and like skate this ramp for like a couple of hours, and then get on the train and go home. And So
you were living at home during
I was, because it wasn't that far, so it was only like a 40-50 minute commute to university. Yeah. So there was no point spending money living there when I was going to save money at my parents. And but during that time, like other people had gone away and done stuff, and a lot of people come to London, you see.
Right.
And my friend who was like, we're in this all together for a long time, and he he formed a band with a couple of guys that I had introduced him to, and like had met through basically going to gigs, you know, and it's all very incestuous. Do you know what I mean? It was like, because it was, as I say, it was still a very small community, and everyone knew everyone.
Yeah.
And you go to these gigs, and if you didn't know someone, you'd be like, "Who is he? I don't like him." You know what I mean? It's like that thing. It's like, "Oh, he's a bit of a show off. Don't like him."
Yeah.
But it was only because he probably like had a better band T-shirt than you, or something, or, you know, or he kind of like had seen a band you hadn't seen. It was a bit like, "Ooh, don't like him," but you kind of got to know him eventually. And then he joined this band, and this started to do something. You see, this band, and it was like, because they were all very connected in this scene, and it was like they started to make a bit of a name for themselves, and they'd done a proper recording, and it was going to get put out as a 7-inch, and he played it to me, and I was like, I kind of like went, and he went, "What?" And I was like, "It's not what I thought it was going to be." And he was like, "What do you mean?" I actually said, funny enough, I said, "I think it sounds a bit like Bad Religion," but in a way that was kind of like, it wasn't a bad thing, but it was like not what I was expecting it to be. And he took that, he was like, I thought you might really like it. I said, "No, I like it, but it's not." And he was like, and he could see that he was like
crushed.
He was really crushed, And I was like, I didn't know what to say. And then he was then he was like, "Do you think it needs another guitar player?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." And then he was like, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Sure." You know what I mean? And then within 2 weeks, I was in a rehearsal room with them. Didn't know any of the stuff, or tried to learn some of it. And one of the guys who was playing guitar in this band had already been in a band that had put an album out on a reputable label, and were kind of like scene heroes. You know, they were one of the first sort of proper British straight edge bands that were around. And so for me, I was just like in total awe of this guy. I was just like, and he was a fantastic guitar player, you know, really, really ahead of his time. And so I was a bit like, I'm not good enough, sort of thing. And I was in this rehearsal room, and then, you know, and I walked in, and they were like Chris, the drummer, was like, "All right, Kev." I was like, "All right." And then it was just weird because they were kind of friends, but it was like, I don't think they really knew that I was coming. Do you know what I mean? It was like a bit of a surprise. And so it was a bit awkward at first, but then I started playing with them, and then they were like, "Yeah, this is cool, this is working." And then
so how did you integrate then into that? Because you heard something on the record that you didn't think was right.
But see, I was listening to sort of a lot more kind of not hardcore, but sort of more progressive-y post-hardcore stuff, and this was a bit more sort of your bog standard sort of like quite melodic,
so hardcore towards the middle of the road.
So it was a bit middle of the road for me, but listening back to now, it isn't. But it was for me, because I was kind of like, I was trying to, you know, get away from that sort of stuff. I wanted to bring a bit more chaotic aggression and like sort of progression into it. Do you know what I mean? And I think they kind of wanted to do that as well. But it was like, you know, you got to start somewhere, and the first things you do are never going to be the same as where you end up. Yeah. So it was always like, you know, for them it was probably like, "Oh, well, this is really good," but I'm kind of like thinking it could be
further
better.
left.
Yeah. And so I did that. I went there and rehearsed, and they were like, "Yeah, cool, you're in." And I was like, "All right." 2 weeks later, I was in a BBC recording a Peel session, and that's no word of a lie.
No way.
Seriously.
Wow.
I think I'd done one gig. Did I even do a gig? Or I either did the Peel session first and then the gig, one or the other. But it was literally a couple of weeks. I had to learn these songs, and then went in, and it was funny because like I had to get my dad to call work and say that I wasn't coming in. And he was like, and I worked in a local record shop. Right. And I was like, "I can't go, I can't do it." And he's like, I was like, "Can you call in for me?" And he's like, "What?" And I was like, and he just rang up and goes, "Yes, mate, he won't be coming today. He's recording the BBC."
Wait, what do you say to that?
Exactly.
He has to come in.
But you know, when it's your dad saying it, it's like, well, he obviously is, so it's not a lie. But so I did that, and it just went like that. You know, and for when like 2-3 years, it was like, you know, we had this label that was called Ouija Records. It was like, do you remember Corner Shop?
I do, yeah.
Well, it was Gary from
Angeli.
Oh, Angela, yeah.
I did a session with.
That's right. Yeah, and they had all these cool bands at the time, like real, like sort of proper, like sort of underground indie stuff that was like really. The Therapy was the first band they had. They did the first couple of Therapy records, and then this had this band Jacob's Mouse and Corner Shop and Huggy Bear. You know, remember them? So they were a really hip, super hip label at the time. And Gary was a real sweetheart, and he ran it out of his bedroom pretty much. Right. He was like, all run it. He worked a rough trade, but he ran it down from the basement. So it was proper DIY punk stuff.
Yeah.
And,
so when Brimful of Asher kicked off, he must have been like, what's going on?
Well, unfortunately for us, that was just after we had split up.
So, really?
Yeah, it was like, I know. So that we didn't see all that millions that came in.
Yeah.
But what he did is, like, we had this 7-inch that this label was supposed to put out, and then it was the same, funny enough, the same record that they had played me, and they didn't want to put it out either because they thought it was a bit too. It was the same reaction.
Right.
And then Chris, the drummer, worked in Slam City, rough trade, and so he knew Gary, and I think he'd given it to him or something. And then Gary was like, "I like this." He's like, "I'll put it out for you." He goes, "But I won't put it out on Ouija because I don't think it's right for that label." But he goes, you can create your own label, and we'll put it out for you." So it was like awesome. We had our own little label called Whole Cart after like the graffiti train thing, and then. He was like, "No, and if there's any bands you find or you like, then you can put them out." And we're like, "Awesome!" I mean, but so we got all the benefits of being on this label and like all the press and everything, but we had our own label as well. And it was a really, really like instant cool like thing we had.
And did you have any kind of financial interest in that label, or was it?
No, it was all taken care of. He took care of all of it. We didn't have to pay a penny. You know, it was like. He would pay for the recordings and like everything. It was just literally not actually officially Ouija, even though we had the same like Ouija address on it and everything. It was on the Whole Cart because I think he thought it was like this might not work with my crowd, but it will definitely work somewhere with it, and it did because we played all these gigs with all these bands on these labels, like so different, but it really worked. And then like. You know, Huggy Bear was a case in point where they were blowing up, and they'd just been to the States and like doing a tour with Bikini Kill, I think it was anyway. And so and they came back and they were literally like all this music they'd experienced, and because we had been listening to all that for years, and that's where we were getting our inspiration from. And we played this gig, and they were like, "Do you know these bands?" And we were like, "Yeah, of course we know these bands. It's like this is our thing." And they were like, it was a bit like. We became their sort of like teachers, and then they would play gigs with them, and they really liked us because we reminded them of all these cool bands in the States that we were trying to emulate anyway.
Yeah.
And so that we had, it was just weird. It was a weird scene because it worked and it shouldn't have worked. But then,
and did that label carry on after you sort of?
No, when the band finished, that label finished with us. But we did put out a couple of other bands, like friends bands, you know, that were like. All right. One band was really good. The other band was like, all right. You know, it was more of a favour for someone. Do you know what I mean? So, but that went on. That was like it was really quick because it was like, I can't believe how quick it is now. It's like that was literally from like 93 to 95. We did 2 albums and like multiple singles, and like toured. It was like we played every week. It's like. Always a gig somewhere. Doesn't matter where it was like a gig to do. You know, but then it was like when we toured with The Offspring. You know?
Oh really?
Yeah. It was like that was like when they were just about to go globally.
Just before
massive.
that.
Yeah.
Huge
so we got put on that tour, which was like a total mismatch, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, the crowd was kind of like the same crowd, but it was like a different. They were way more commercial, and we were like, these arty like punks, you know what I mean? So it didn't really work, but it was fun, and for all the wrong reasons. And then we did, we played with some, but just like did gigs, and it was like, like it'd be like Fugazi, it'd be like Napalm Death, Melvins, like NSFU, all these like Quicksand. It was just. And then you'd have like Huggy Bear. We played with Corner Shop. We played with all those bands. All these. Like, it was just. cool.
Did you ever kind of play? Because presumably you're supporting.
Most of the time we're supporting, yeah.
And did any of the crowd surprise you? Like, we're going to do this gig with whoever it is, and they're not going to get it, and then they're just totally into it.
There was the odd one or two. I can't remember which ones are now, but it was always the ones you weren't expecting. You were like, I think it was more like the Huggy Bear type gigs that was like the more receptive to what we were doing.
Yeah,
right.
I think the hardcore gigs or the punk gigs or the metal gigs that we were doing, it was almost like the audience was kind of quite snobby.
You're too cool for school.
Yeah, and it was also like it was a very thing where like if you weren't American, you weren't cool, you know. Right. So, but then there was like a sort of a burgeoning scene happening around us as well, of like about 3 or 4 bands that the press picked up on, and they did an article on it, and it was like, I can't remember, they called it the new wave of British hardcore or something, you know, it was like something like that. And there was a band called Understand who signed to Warner's. Okay. Funny enough, the guy who came to sign us, and when we were playing with them and saw them, thought it was us, and signed them. That's a true story.
Oh my God.
That was Nathan McGough, who was son of Roger McGough, the famous poet. He was he was the Happy Mondays. He was the guy who was the Happy Mondays manager. Right. And he was working at Warner's. Wow. And like he came and we played his gig, and I think they went on first or whatever, and he was like, I like them, I'll sign them, and then that was it. But to be honest, it was probably better because we were never right for a major label. It was never going to be right. And to be honest, they got a load of, you know, their sort of like career went up like that, but the hardcore crowd shunned them because they were like, oh, you're major label sellouts, you know what I mean? Right. It was like they didn't want to know. So it had they're kind of like one hand takes and one hand gives, you know, it's that sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah, there was that band. Then there was a band in Nottingham called Bob Tilton who were fucking fantastic. They were like one of the best things that come out of this country. They were like amazing. And, like, you know, we played loads of shows with them, and it was like every time we saw them, it was just like, wow, these guys are amazing. And they were kind of like they were in a similar world to what we were. Very similar influences. They were like it's almost like we were kind of like the sort of the richer version, southern version of the poorer northern version of them, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. It was like, because they were literally just like some kids from Nottingham who had nothing, and we had nothing as well, but so it was because we lived in London, everyone thought we were like, you know, rich. It's like, yeah, seriously.
And did that kind of correlate with the music?
We had a label, obviously, with a guy that like was putting out other records, so everyone thought we were like making loads of money, which was totally nonsense.
Oh, you got a record deal? You must be rich.
That's exactly, yeah. Oh, you live in London? Oh, you know, that sort of thing. Even though Gary was like probably more DIY than most of the labels around, you know what I mean? So there was this little scene, and it was really cool, and there was like another band called Dead Wrong, who I ended up going to play with when they split up, and they formed another band up in Liverpool. And
so did you move up to Liverpool?
Yeah, I went because I loved their band so much. They were the other band that were like was so ahead of the curve. And then they basically broke up, and they asked if I wanted to go and play bass for them, and I was like, yeah, tell me where, and I'm coming. And then we did that, and then that was a rocky ride. That was pretty.
And so were you in a band at that point, or
no? Like this band Fabric I was doing had just split up.
Okay.
We had just split up.
So we had post Ouija.
Yeah. It was literally, I was just licking my wounds. I was like at home, and was going because none of us wanted to split up. As the guitar player decided he just wanted to leave. He had a bit of a weird one. I think it was like something like we had a gig booked, and it was like the Underworld with some American band, and the guy from Sony in the States was coming to look at us, to sign us. It was a big deal, you know, and we're like, cool. And like, it was all like, we've got to this point now, and we're like, yeah. And then the guitar player, Jamie, was like, oh, I know, I'm going to Glastonbury. And we're like, what? And it was like, yeah, I've got to go. And I was just like, well, what about this gig? And then he was like, well, I think I'm just going to quit because I want to. He was going through something, and I think he was just. I think there was a lot of it was like, I think he felt that I was kind of becoming more of the songwriter in the band, and it was more my influence, and he was not feeling part of it. That's what I found out later. But he didn't ever really tell that to me, but I think that's what it was. And he just decided that was it there and then. And
so
it was
he
like,
kind
just,
of felt sidelined, do you think?
I think so. I think he felt like he wasn't, because he was the original.
He was the spearhead originally.
He was the songwriter,
Yeah.
you know. And then I came along, and literally I was just like, right, we're doing this, and he was like, and he was loving it, but at the same time, I don't think he felt like it was his thing anymore. But Jamie had a lot of issues, a lot of other issues going on as well. So it wasn't just.
And he'd
that.
had previous success as well.
Yeah. Well,
so
he'd been
maybe
he'd say success, but he was kind of. He was
experienced.
seasoned. He was a lot more seasoned than me. And then, and then it was like, well, we don't want to carry on without him because he's too important. Because, you know, that's what we were like. We were like, it was either us or it's no one. Sort of thing,
right,
you
it's
know,
not a case of replacing.
No, not then it wasn't. It was like, so, yeah, we split. We had a little, sat in Acton Park, actually, and sat there and we had a little meeting. And we were like, right, this is done then. We're like, cool.
Yeah.
See you later. And that was it. And then, so I was like sat at home, as I say, kind of not really knowing what to do. And then this came up, and I was like, right, I'm off to Liverpool. Bye. And I moved up there and started doing this band with them. And there was interest straight away. Like Rough Trade were interested. There's a few, you know, we put a couple of singles out pretty much off the bat, and it was a kind of weird time because we were all kind of getting a bit older and we were getting out of this sort of hardcore punk thing. Britpop was happening massively, you know, it was all around us, and there was all these other influences going on, and all of a sudden we wanted to be other things. You wanted to play other types of music, and you didn't want to be restricted too much. So it felt like every week we were trying to do a different band, and it was really hard, you know. And then we were getting all these like labels being interested because of our previous bands, and they were trying to sign us for being this band that we'd started out as, but by the end of it we were like, I don't know, we were like sounding like spiritualized or something, you know. It was just weird. It was like nothing like it started off with, and I kind of started to get a bit annoyed with it, and there was a few sort of like issues with the people in the band, and it just never really got going. It was too hard, and it was like, I think there was a contract with the solicitors for the label that just seemed to go on forever, you know. And it's like once that, because you don't feel like you've really properly signed to a label, it just doesn't feel.
There's no focus.
There's no focus, no. Yeah. And it was like,
and it sounds like artistically there wasn't really a focus.
There wasn't, no. I mean,
I want to do this. I want to do this.
The main guy in it, this guy called Andy Capper, who ended up basically moving down here and writing for the NME, and then he had quite an illustrious career. He basically became the editor of Vice magazine.
Oh right. And
he now lives in the States and did Vice TV.
Right.
He doesn't do it anymore, but I mean he kind of like he was the first one to kind of move back down here, and then I was like, okay, right, well this is over then. There's no point in this, so I'd move back down here. And then, you know, he kind of went and did his thing, and then I was like, yet again, sort of like going, what am I doing now? And I kind of had enough. I was like, I don't want to do bands I don't ever want to do bands anymore, sort of thing.
And at that point, were you earning enough money from bands that you didn't have to have?
No, I wasn't earning anything.
Oh,
that's
really?
The thing. No.
So you had a job, whatever job it was?
Yeah, I was get a job, and then I was like, I basically ended up working at HMV. Like, I started doing that in Liverpool, and I transferred down here.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of done. I was kind of done playing music. I don't think I even picked up guitar for a long time. It was all my stuff was back in my mum's.
Right.
And
long time being year?
Well, probably year, 2 years, something like that.
Okay.
For me back then, that was a long time.
And were you still listening to music?
Yeah, I was fully into music. That's the thing. I was going to loads of gigs, and but I just wasn't interested really in doing a band thing.
Yeah.
And then one day, this guy walked into work who I'd met briefly at a gig through a friend, and he was like, I heard that you play guitar, and I was like, yeah. And he was like, do you fancy playing guitar for this band I do? We need another guitar player. And I was like, this is an American guy, this guy called Nathan, and he was pretty cool, you know what I mean? He was like, yeah, this guy's cool. And then I was like, right, yeah, okay, well, what's it like? And he gave me this CD. They'd already got a label, and it was like they had an album out already, and it was they were doing a second one, but they needed someone to play these songs live with. And I played it, and I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. It was like a weird cross between sort of Massive Attack, bit of like New Order and sort of kind of experimental sort of like soundscapey stuff.
Right.
It was really cool, you know. It was just him and this German guy who was like doing all electronica, and they'd done all this stuff themselves. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I went and got my guitars, and I came back down here and I started rehearsing with them, and it was really hard. Everything was to a click track on headphones, you know, and it was like I'd never done anything like this before, and it was like everything had to be perfection, because you couldn't, if you fucked up, everyone else fucked up. There was no room for it. It wasn't like thrashing away on stage, and if you did something wrong, it didn't matter because it all part of it. This had to be right. You know what I mean? And it was like a whole new discipline. And I was like, right, so we did that, and then they had a management that was like a live agency that was like had Chemical Brothers and Primal Scream. They're all part of that. So straight away it was like, right, well, you know, we'd get these gigs. I was like playing at the ICA, you know, and like headlining at the ICA and one of these weird nights, and then we'd be playing at sort of, where's the place in East London I thought was always really cool. It was like a really cool place to play. It was like an old music hall. It's down in Whitechapel, near.
Yeah, I was thinking of Wilton's Music Hall, but
no, it's not far from there. But it's not that. It's tucked off the way off the road. But it's like it's like everything's like old, and it's like it's just sit down. Everyone sits down.
An old sort of bingo hall.
It's something
some of the
hall.
seats are halfway on.
It's
like
something hall. It begins with a T. Not the Troxy. No, it's not that. No, not that big. But anyway, I remember we played that gig there, and I was like, I like this. It's cool because it's like proper. This is like proper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, so a friend of ours, a woman, was like, she came, and like I know her. She basically had just signed the Lost Prophets.
Oh.
yeah, and she was doing really well. Sort of like she had a thing with Sony.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to? Are you right there, Steve?
I'm going to press DND.
So she came, and then she was like, I really like this. This is like something. There's something going on here. There's something really kind of cool. And so I was like, she was like, can I help you? And I was like, well, what do you mean? She's like, I'll get you a deal. And I was like, well, okay, we've already got a deal, but yeah, let's see what you can do. And so we went away, and we recorded this second album. They went off to Bavaria in Germany, and they did it, and I went over there for a bit, and then I came along, and they had all these songs, and I listened to it, and I was like, holy shit, this is pretty good. And I was like, and you could see they were excited about it, and I was like, right. And then we took it to her, and she was like, this is a no-brainer. Do you know what I mean? This is like easy. So all these meetings got set up. I was literally still working at HMV, and all these meetings I had to go out on my lunch breaks and like run off down to like somewhere down in like southwest London for go and see the head of BMG, you know, and sit there and have a meeting with him, and it was just like really surreal. Do you know what I mean? And they were like talking six-figure sums. They were talking like, this is what we'll do for a year, then you've got to do this for a year, and it was just like, you know, literally was that thing of like how major labels work. This is how we work. It's like, none of this, forget all you know, this is what we do. It's like, we'll put the single out, you will tour that for 6 months. Then we'll put another single out, you'll tour that for another 6 months.
Hey, Dennis.
For you, Matt, you've someone else here as well, yeah?
Okay, thank you. We'll go. Loads of stuff.
Oh, it's like Christmas.
Yeah.
Waste the money.
Brilliant.
Right.
Have a lovely day.
You too.
Thank you.
You too.
You know what we didn't do?
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Let's
well.
go. Oh, well.
This one will have character.
I'll have something.
100 hertz.
Right.
Well,
So,
we've
yes.
had plenty of hertz already. Before you go any further, do I need to prepare myself for some pain at the end of this story?
Yeah, of course. There's always pain.
No.
There's always pain in music industry. When you deal with major labels, there's always pain.
Yeah.
There's never anything easy. I mean, this is what I learned. But yeah, so we had this record, and we were doing these talks with labels, and they were saying, you know, like this 6 months here, 6 months there. Then we'll put the album out. Then you'll tour for another year. So by the time we already had this album done, by the time anyone would hear it, it'd be 2 years later, and we were already writing new stuff. And we were like, I started to go, I don't know if I'm into this. I was a bit like, yeah, it feels a bit.
Because there's a massive disconnection. Like it's basically a record is like a diary.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The further you get away from it, the more difficult it is to kind of.
Exactly, but you know, if you're a creative person, you're already on to new things,
Yeah.
and you're like, those moments are gone once you've finished recording. It's like you're on to the next thing, and then, I mean, you'll play those songs live, but you're all kind of almost like starting to bring in new stuff as well.
Yeah.
But not in their world. This is how you do it, and it's like, it's us, it's this or not. And so like we had these meetings, and they all basically said the same thing, you know. But then they were like, well, we need to see you play live. And we were like, okay. So because two of us lived in Germany at the time and two here, so it was like doing a gig was a massive ordeal. Logistical nightmare. And so this girl, Julie, she was like, look, we'll get you basically a good showcase with a supporting a band that's going to be a full show, and you know, and we'll get them down to that. And so like Lucian Grange, Universal, he was on board, and it was like, you know, all these people were like coming, and it was like we supported some American band down at the Monarch Falcon, whatever it was called, in Camden.
Yeah.
Sold out show.
Is that the one that's upstairs?
It was. I don't think it's there now, but it's funny because I played it when it was downstairs with Fabric before it was even a proper venue. It was like a bar, yeah. So it was this sort of like come full circle sort of thing.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we did that, and it was actually a good show, but they didn't turn up. Half of them didn't turn up anyway.
Right.
Because there was always an excuse. There was always some excuse. Like I think Lucian goes, "Oh, I'm coming back from Vegas. I'm on a plane. I'll send one of my minions to see you," sort of thing, you know. Anyway, we're like, so that was kind of like, oh well, okay. Well, what do we do now? And Julie's like, well, we'll just see what happens. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, the emails started like stop coming between her and the labels, and she was like, look, I don't think it's going to happen. So what I'll do is I'll put it out for you through my label, which was doing really well at the time, through Sony. And we're like, sure, okay, cool. Bit disappointing, but never mind, it's still good. And she put it out, and then it came out, got amazing reviews everywhere. Like, I think we had like album of the month a week in like most magazines, and it was like, we even had a big feature in the Sunday Telegraph Times magazine.
Right. No
put
way.
out thing, and she's like, this is all good, it's going to go, sort of thing. We're like, cool. So we did this one show, like a little launch show down at sort of Metro on Oxford Street, which was alright, you know, just to kind of like, you know, get the press down and get the like, you know, the thing going. And of course she'd done a similar thing that we'd had with Fabric, where she'd put it out on a label, but she'd given us our own label to kind of make sure that it wasn't associated with like Lost Prophets or Bullet from Bring Me Horizon or whatever she had, those sort of bands. There was sort of a different crowd, and and we did that show, and then it was like nothing happened for ages, and we're like we need to tour, we need to go on tour, we need to play this record, we need to get out there, because it's like the initial sales come from the press, but then the other sales always come off the back of people seeing you play live and, you know, getting reviews and stuff
there's
like
a buzz
that.
And then other papers will be writing
we had
reviews.
Garbage, like, you know, Garbage were big fans, and they'd come to like a gig at Notting Hill Arts Centre that we'd done on a Saturday afternoon. They used to do these like cool little matinee show things for bands. And then
downstairs.
We did one of those, and they turned up, and there was like there was like Butch Vig or whatever, and he was like going, kind of interested, and do you want to support us, sort of thing. And it was like, so like, you know, there was that on the table, and we're saying to Julie's like, look, what about this Garbage thing, we could do this, you know, whatever. And then there was a few other sort of things of interest. I think there was, if I remember rightly, I can't for 100%, but I think there was even an offer of like Soft Cell, seriously, on the table. They were like interested, and it was like. And we had Graham Massey from AOH State. He was like, we went up to Manchester, played a gig. He took us out for like a meal, because he'd kind of like was interested in doing stuff. And there was things happening. It was like really crazy. But as I say, no gigs happening. And then later on, it kind of like transpires after we start getting a bit like, what's going on, what is happening, and then it turns out that she had a silent partner in this label. He was a French guy who basically held all the purse strings, and because it was part owned with a film DVD sort of thing that he did anyway, and like he basically didn't want to spend any more money on it because the record has started to slow down. He was like, well, it's not selling us, and we were like, yeah, because we haven't played it. You know, it's
so
only
there's
going to
no
sell.
tour support basically.
There was no tour support,
yeah.
And then there was no gigs. There was nothing,
and
literally it just went. It just stopped overnight. There was nothing we could do because.
But you're still tied into the contract, obviously.
Well, if there was a contract, I don't remember how much.
Okay.
How much a contract was that bound us to whatever. But during this time, me and Nathan had been doing this other band. Like we'd been writing stuff to do for something completely different, and that had started to get a bit of momentum because we were playing with some other guys and some other bands that were like really well known in that scene, and there was a bit of a buzz about us because this thing was happening. Do you know what I mean? And this was like just kind of like coming off the back end of this other band called Bridge and Tunnel, and it was like, and that just, I say, just stopped. And then I remember Julie just being going, I'm really sorry about this. This is just it, you know. And she goes, but your other band seems like it'll do all right. And I was like, thanks then. Bye. I mean, she meant it in in a nice way. It wasn't like I was saying. She was like, look, you know, I'm really sorry, but it seems like this other thing might do so.
Have my blessing. Go and
so that was cool, and then it did really well, and it for like 2 or 3 years we did that, and it was like it got up and up and up, and then to a point where we were a kind of a thing that people would sort of use as comparing other bands to, you know what I mean?
Okay. I mean, and what was the name of that project?
It was called Capricorns, and it was like it was instrument. Wasn't meant to be instrumental, but it ended up being instrumental because no one could be bothered to sing. So we basically started writing this stuff that was like, it was like metal, it was like a bit of hardcore, and it was like progressive, and it was like all this stuff thrown into a mix, like songs that were like 10 minutes long, you know, really heavy down-tuned guitars with loads of quiet dynamics, I kind of like think Mogwai on steroids sort of thing. And they actually got coined a term, like it was like instrumental. I think someone got coined, and then like other bands started doing. It became a thing, and it was like, and that was another. We played some. Again, it was like tour, shows, record. I think we did, and it was the same like 2 albums, EP in like 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And then that sort of like. Things happen and people sort of not drifted off, but ended up getting sacked for stupid reasons. When I say sacked, it's like got rid of because they didn't want to do a thing or something, and it was like, I don't want to get into too much detail of that because it's like these people are my friends, and it's like, it was all not nice at the time,
right? Okay,
but all nice now.
Okay.
And but it was just like, that was great, and that happened for quite a few years, and then, as I say, then that just sort of like had to stop basically because it wasn't becoming the band it was. There was people in it that weren't even like original members.
Okay,
and then it got diluted. It started to get diluted, and I was like the only constant in it, really.
Right.
And then
did you decide?
And then I cut it. Yeah, I think. Well, basically, we got this one last show where we got offered this show, and it was like a really good show, and it was basically this festival in Holland, and we were like on the main big stage opening for this band Down, who was like Pantera, Phil Anselmo and all that. It was like, and we did that, and was like, this is a good way to go. We'll just do this, even though it wasn't the same band. It was like, if we're going to finish, because every band you've ever done always like it doesn't end when you expect it to, so you never really kind of finish it. And I was like, we'll do this, and then it's done. Yeah. And it was like a really nice way to finish, apart from the fact the other people in the band weren't there. But for me, it was a good way to do it. And then that was like kind of like that sort of thing of like, I've got to do something that's not like this now. Do you know what I mean? Because everything I do, every time I do something, I need to do it which is completely not like the thing I've done before.
Right.
I didn't want to just go into another band that was doing. I could have taken that momentum with that band and then gone, and I've got a load of people and gone, right, Capricorn's Mark II, and let's do this. But I just wanted to get away from it. It's almost like I just need to clear my head from all that stuff, and I always want to progress and do other things. So I just basically did something way more aggressive than that for a bit, and you know, more kind of like stripped down and raw and like less fiddly and whatever. And it was almost like I was getting that out of my system. And then and it's just like over the years I've just sort of done little things here and there. But that was kind of like, after that was the sort of thing that I just sort of, I don't think I could ever go back to being in a band like that because it's too much.
So that band was at that point, presumably you're not working in HMV anymore.
No. Well, I was working, but it was more like I wasn't really. I was working in like a record store that was sort of like, you know, not even a proper job really. It was like a free for all. But I was kind of in and out of work. I'd be unemployed for a bit, and then I'd like, you know, because then I would go off on tour for like a couple of weeks, and then, you know, come back and sit around, do nothing, then go back off on tour. So there was no way I could probably have after a while. There's no way you could probably have a proper job. Yeah. But you make it work. That's the thing. When you do music, you just make it work. You have no money, but it's amazing what you can do with no money sometimes. And the thing is, when you're living off, like, you know, PDs or whatever it is, or, you know, you're going around venues and just eating their food, it's like you don't need that much money.
Not a lot of money.
You know what I mean?
Out,
it's like you do. It's all you need is pay your rent when you get home, and then you're kind of good. But there's always be a thing of like, what can I sell? What guitar do I not really use now? I'll get rid of that. I mean, I think, God, over the years, all those guitars that have come and gone, that like literally just because you just need to eat, you need to eat, you need to pay your rent, and that's it, you know.
But they're tools, aren't they?
They are tools. I mean, that's what I've always thought. It's like, there's exactly that, and it's like, you can get, they are like nice tools, and they're very kind of like, you get emotional about them, but they are just tools. They're not like anything else. But now it's like, after not being in bands, it's like those, they're kind of becoming more like a sort of, I don't know, not like, I don't feel sentimental about them, I don't feel attached to them, but I keep hold of them for longer. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't feel like I need to sort of, you know, play music on them that is specifically for a thing. I can play my own stuff, because like, you buy these tools to play in a certain way. Like you buy a Les Paul, like I did, because not that I'm a Les Paul fan, but it was the guitar that worked for that music. So I'd buy that, and that was it, job done. Once I finished it, I sold it, you know. And then, but now I have guitars, or I have instruments that I like are for me, so I hang on to them longer. Do you know what I mean?
And you're drawn to them because of what they are, rather than just because it gets the. It's not
it gets
a hammer.
the job done. Exactly.
Yeah, you buy a Japanese whatever knife or whatever because it's wonderful and beautifully crafted, and you have an emotional connection with it before you use it as a tool. Whereas if you're just buying the tool to do a job and then, well, I don't need it anymore.
And it's amazing when you like, I'd buy these guitars and I'd be like, you know, expensive guitars as well. They weren't cheap, you know. I wasn't buying like £300-400 guitars. I was buying like £2,000 guitars, and I'd like literally have them for like a couple of weeks and then like, nah, get rid of it, because it didn't do the job. And they were lovely guitars, but it wasn't right for that music. You know, but I couldn't afford just to buy another one, so I'd just sell that and get another one. It was like literally 2 or 3 weeks I'd be changing guitars, and I'd be down Denmark Street going, give me something else, I want this. You know what I mean? It was like, and you couldn't really figure it out until, you know, you sort of got right to the end, and then it was too late. You know, you're like, that's the right guitar, but now I don't have the band to play it. It's funny.
Because now you make guitars.
Well, this is it,
So when did you start doing that?
Right,
When obviously you started.
So basically, after that band ended, and I did for a couple of years, I did sort of a couple of bands that were like more like, I guess, sort of like personal projects. Really, that was just sort of music that I really wanted to play, and I knew that no one was going to be that interested in it in that sense. Not, as a commercial thing. But it was fun. I was doing it with some friends, and there was literally no kind of like agenda on the board. It's like, we'll just play some gigs, we'll have some fun.
Yeah.
You know, record some stuff, done. It's no biggie. And then I did that for a few years, and then I met this girl who was in this band called Pettibone, this all-girl band who were like fantastic. They were like, you know, breath of fresh air, could all play, really like great stage presence, you know. But this girl, especially this girl Ivana, was like something about her. I was like, she had something, and I was like, if I do another band, I'll do it with her, sort of thing. And then we just got chatting one day, and we were talking about music, and she was like, I don't really like all this stuff, and I can't do it in this band. And I was like, I like this stuff too. And it's like, well, should we just see what, you know, we can do? And so we started sending each other stuff, and we were like, yeah, this is really interesting. That's like cool. And then that turned into a thing for quite a few years, and you know, did an album and singles, and it was like a new, fresh thing completely as well. And then,
so was that attached to a label, or you just self-released it?
We did. Yeah, we put the album out on a label called God Unknown, which is like a really great label at the moment, putting a lot of great stuff out, all very varied, but yeah, they put that out for us, and the same thing, got great reviews, like, you know, sort of like, you know, a couple of articles in some big magazines, and you know, that was another thing where it was like, yeah, this is cool. And then yeah, again, something comes along, and she had problems with her back and she couldn't play guitar, and it was like, it was serious though. It wasn't like, oh, you know, the doctor was like, you can't, if you want this to not get worse, you need to stop playing. Or you need to have like, you can't have a weight around your shoulders or whatever, but also like sitting down became a problem. And she was in pain, you know, she was like in physical pain, and it was just like, I was like, look, this band's it's not worth your back, you know what I mean? So like, let's just walk away. And I think at that time I was kind of done anyway. I think I was just like, I was like, I'm not really into playing gigs anymore, I'm not really into rehearsing, and I just didn't want to do it. I was just bored of it, you know. I liked making the music, but I didn't like the rest of it that went with it. And
also you kind of get to a point in your life where you realise how precious time is.
Yeah.
And how little of it there is.
Of course, like the older you get, and like the more sort of your priorities change, or as a good friend of mine says, he goes, I have new disciplines, which is always makes me laugh. You know what I mean? He's another musician friend of mine. He's like in the States, and he's like, yes, new disciplines. That's what I was like, cool. So this band with her, Broken DC, was like a great thing, but at the same time, it was like, I just was done. I think I was just kind of like, I want to do something different, you know, but I didn't really know what to do, and I was kind of a bit of a loose end, and I was like, the job I was doing, I'd gotten into tour managing during this time, quite a lot,
so
to fill the gaps
kind
between.
Of level?
Yeah, quite a good level. Yeah. I was like, you know, I dipped my toe in it over the years when I'd been out of work, and like people were like, can you do this, and then I was like, and I was quite good at it, you see. It's because I'm quite super organised. You know, I'm quite good at organising stuff. So I was like, I did that, and then when I was doing this band, it sort of, I wasn't really working properly in any like capacity. So I did this, and I ended up like tour managing a couple of bands, and then one for quite a while, and did some pretty interesting stuff with that. But
I can't let you say that. Yeah, I did a couple of bands, and did a couple of years.
Yeah, well, you know, it's like, I mean, interesting.
I know you don't want to name drop, and let's just take that as read.
Right, okay.
But let's dig into that a little bit, because I'm sure there's some really interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, no, there is. I mean, there is. A lot of it's very like your standard like stuff that happens when like, bands on the road. It's all that kind of like nonsense. But it was like
Spinal Tap.
Yeah, but it was more. It's more of like it's the condition of the human psyche when people are in vans, and how those people behave. Yeah, it's so weird, because when you're not in the band, you kind of and you're a bit distanced from it. You see it in a totally different light, and it's like, it was almost like, God, this is humans. Weird. You know what I mean? They're just weird people. It's like, because for me, I think there's something very weird about playing music all the time, every day, in a different country, in a different venue. it's just weird. It's a weird life. It's
and
not
doing
normal.
the same thing as well.
Doing the same thing
over and over and over and
this
over
is the
again.
thing. People think that it's like, oh, it's so cool. You're on the road and you get to see all these things, and it's like, it must be so liberating and all this stuff. It's like, no, it's a job. It literally is as boring as working in, you know, a retail job or whatever. It's the same thing every day. It's just a slightly different, you know, environment, but it's the same thing, but just weirder because you're supposed to be. It's like it's entertainment, really. I mean, it's like showbiz, you know. It's that sort of thing. It's like you have to put on a face. You have to go out there,
press play, basically.
You like you can be literally hungover to fuck. You like, which most people are all the time in a van for like 6 hours a day, which is a weird thing to do anyway. So you've got this like tiredness of travelling. You've got this like, because bands like to party, bands like to do these things, and you've got this added into the mix, and then you've got to put on this face and go out and play, and you know, pretend that you're really into it. And it's like, it's hard enough to do that, like when you're in the right frame of mind, let alone when you're not. And you can just see these people just like unraveling in front of you. It's, and like, seriously, like losing their minds, you know. And it's like, I was like, I don't know if I like this. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit dark.
And all the like the weird way that it manifests as well, with all like tantrums over. Now, I've got this.
Men are basically babies.
Yeah,
they are huge babies, and they're like, I won't name the names, but there's one band, and it was like this. They'd kind of come back. They'd been away for a while, and they had a bit of success in the sort of late '90s, early 2000s. And they were associated with a couple of other bands that were kind of big at the time, and they were kind of the band that didn't really make it as much as the other bands. But they did have a bit of success. But then they kind of like, they'd come back and they'd just book this European tour, and I got asked to do it, and I was like, yeah, cool. And I didn't really know much about them, but I was like, yeah, whatever. And they were like, within about, I don't know, a couple of days, the shows were going really well. And they were like, oh, it was almost like, we're back, guys. This is like so cool. And the sort of, the main guy was like he was like everyone like, whatever he said went. So it was like, I didn't want to piss him off, you know. He was like, and he even looked like a bit of a man baby. It was quite weird. But he was like, I remember it's just like, all the rest of the band were just like, kind of like, whatever he does, yeah, we're cool, we're like, whatever. And they didn't want to piss him off, but at the same time, it's like they were trying to sort of like be in this band and have fun without him knowing. Do you know what I mean? Because he was like, oh, you've got to do this, you can't be doing this and like playing these shows, you've got to be professional. And they're like, yeah. And then when his back was turned, they were like, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And it was like, anyway, there was a point where it was like, he actually asked me if he could eat. And I just went, what? He's like, is it alright if I eat now? And I was like, you're a 40-odd-year-old man, you can eat when the fuck you want. It's like, you don't need me to tell you. It's like, and that was a little moment where I went, this is weird. People are weird. It's like, you would never do this in any other environment, you know what I mean? And it's like, it started to become real, there's a real darkness around that sort of world. I mean, I'm not saying it all is, but I think when bands are at a certain level, and there's a real pressure on them to kind of like, as I say, they were like trying to come back and make this band something again, and it's like, it was probably like, you know, done 20 years ago, but you can, you know, if you try hard enough, you can rinse it a bit, and I think that's what was happening. But it just sort of made me go, I don't really know if I want to be part of this world anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's lost its appeal. Going back to those days when I was skating, and everything was really carefree, and there was like, you know, just excitement everywhere. It was like,
and the thing that's motivating you to do things,
and it was motivating.
Different.
And now I was just looking at this and just going, it just all seems sort of
spreadsheets, airports,
exactly that, and mixed with people like losing their minds, you know. And it's like, and then after that I did this band who, I was a big fan of when I was a kid, and they had reformed and they're doing these big comeback shows, and
I
got asked to do it, and I went, yeah, I'll do that. I love this band. Do you know what I mean?
You're allowed to tell us who it is?
Yeah, it's a band called Loop.
Okay.
Right, and I did this band, and it was the same thing. They had all these big comeback shows and whatever, and Rob, who's a dear friend of mine, I love him dearly, and he was like, he didn't really want to put this band back together, but I think the offers were coming in, they were too much, and he was like, okay, I'll do it. And they did these initial shows, and then they went to the States for a month, and then they came back, and then they started doing shows, but the shows basically were kind of getting less over time.
Okay.
Because I think the initial thing of people coming to see them had kind of worn off. Like all the original fans had come and seen them, and then they were like, "Oh, I've done that now. I've done my sentimental thing, and I've done that." So, but they weren't bringing any kind of new fans into the fold. So these were shows we're getting, but he was suffering from a lot of anxiety and worry about all of this, and you know, and he'd had kind of like sort of health issues in the past with that, and you know, which were kind of resurfacing, and it was like, and I took it as far as I could go with them, and then I was like, and I think they realised I was like, you know, I wasn't really kind of into it, and also like money wise, the money was starting to not be where it was, and people like me they couldn't afford, so it's like, it was kind of like it came to an end with that, and that was it. That was the last for me, and then I suddenly was like, I want to do something different. I want to like literally just utilise my hunger in some other way. So then I was like, well, I really enjoyed building that guitar.
All the way back to the guitar, yeah.
And I remember that, and it was a really nice time, and it was like I've really always been interested. Obviously, I love guitars and always have done, but I've always wanted to make guitars, and there have been a couple of times over the years where there had been an opportunity to do it, but it wasn't affordable for me, because it was like I couldn't like afford to live if I did this, like learn how to do it, because the courses didn't work like that back then. And then just out of interest, it was all weird. It's like how lots of things, very kind of like timings, are all important with stuff, aren't they? It's like this. So this finished, and then I was like not really happy with the work I was doing. I ended up not being able to work for a company because I had issues with a driving license that they couldn't insure me on, and I was just like, I suddenly just went from like nothing, like to had nothing, and I was like, right, I need to focus. What am I going to do? Guitar building courses. Let's have a look. And of course it came up, and it was like, right, yeah, okay. Well, that seems pretty straightforward. 2 days a week. And I was like, I went and enrolled on that, and then I was like, right, I need to get a job, because I can't just do that 2 days a week. And then like I found a job that would allow me to do 3 days a week and go and do that. So I was like, that's cool. And then I met a lady who's now my wife, who basically just was like fully behind it, and just went, oh, don't worry about paying rent for that time, because you can't afford to do it, and I want you to do this. And it was like, that in itself was everything to me. Do you know what I mean? It was like, wow, no one's ever done that for me before. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, right, I'm going to do this. And because she had done that for me, I was like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to do this. So so I did that for 3 years, and I'm here now. That's exactly what happened.
Well, you know? So the guitars that you brought in last week, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Are they things that you did on the course, or
no?
They're ones that
I've done afterwards. Yeah, I mean, it's like
they were extraordinary.
Thanks, man. Thanks very much. But I mean, it's like it's a constant learning process. I'm still learning all the time, and it's like, you know, I'm never really happy with everything, but it's like it's getting there. It's getting to a point where I feel like I'm almost ready to put my name on stuff.
They look amazing.
But you know, it's like I'm still music-wise. I'm still doing loads of music. That's the thing. I haven't stopped doing the music. I just don't do it in that capacity.
In that capacity. Does it feel better doing it like that?
Oh my god, it's so much better. It's like
there's the pressure is removed.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, I've done, since I've stopped doing that, I've done 2 sort of solo records on my own with a bunch of help from friends, and then I did a Capricorns record that came out of nowhere with basically happened in a day. We did it all in a day, and it was crazy. Yeah, it was like Nathan. He moved to Tokyo, and he was coming over to do. He was learning how to start a business up in Tokyo. There was
Okay.
a guy in Berlin that was like a t-shirt company. It was massive. They do like Rammstein and whatever. Like so, it's like there's loads of money. So he was coming over here to do that for 6 months, and I was like, while you're here, do you fancy doing some music? And I was like, look, I've got this stuff written. Let's do it. And it wasn't even going to be a Capricorn's thing. And then he was like, yeah. So we did it, and then I was like, booked a studio, went in, I was like, bashed it out. And we're like, this is pretty good, isn't it? And he was like, yeah. I was like, should we get Dean on it? Should we get Dean to play bass? He was the Capricorn's bass. He lives in Canada, and he was like, yeah, why not? Send it to him. He was like, I'm all about it. And I was like, right, Capricorn's record done, but it's not finished yet. So that happened. So that, but that wouldn't have happened like that quick if I'd been doing it as a band. Do you know what I mean? It's like doing almost like an album in a day is ridiculous. Let alone sort of like, you know,
well,
with people who live like halfway around the world.
There's not the expectation that we've got to make a record. It's just like let's do one.
Yeah.
Let's do another one. And
exactly.
another one.
Yeah, exactly. And then and I've done stuff with John. Obviously, you know.
And
Mark Hollis's son.
Yeah,
which is ongoing. There's more stuff happening with that, and that's. I mean, same thing. It's like it's not a band. It's not a thing. But it's like music doesn't have to be a band. That's the thing I've learned. It's like I think everyone thinks when you start playing music, you have to get in a band. You have to go on the road.
Yeah.
You have to release a record. You don't have to do any of that. I mean, that only started to happen from the 60s onwards, really. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know,
how can we make money out of this?
Yeah. I mean, it's like these, but no, bands and touring and all that stuff only happened from like sort of 60s onwards. You know, it's like, and only then it was like big bands who kind of constantly did it. It was like most bands would just play local shows all the time. You know what I mean? But it's like, I think it's become a thing where it's like, everyone thinks they've got to do it this way, and you don't, you know. And especially now with like everything's, you can do stuff in your bedroom. It's very easy to make music, but
that's true.
But there's nothing better than sitting in a room with 4 people and turning it up. It's life affirming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
It really is. So, and I do miss that. I have to say that's one thing I do miss. But so what? You know, there's other things going on.
That's true.
And that's it. Yeah.
Is there any? Because I know that you. In what capacity I don't know, but I know that you were on the road with Rage, weren't you?
No, we didn't. We weren't on the road. We did. We were friends with them, basically.
Okay. And how did you?
So basically, with
them?
Fabric, a guy Tony, who's a bass player in Fabric, who's now the singer of Turbo Negro. Funny enough, yeah, it's funny how things work out. He basically was friends with Zach from the hardcore scene, because Zach was in hardcore bands for that, and like, fantastic. Actually, well, the band before Rage Against the Scene, if anyone hasn't heard it, it's called Inside Out. We're amazing. Like they were like one of the best of that time. Anyway, he knew him, and they came over and they played at the Borderline, and he was like, oh, come and see this band, Rage. It's Zach's new band, whatever. And I was like, so we all went down, and we were like, cool. And there was like 30 people there. No one there. It was like, because it was like a label showcase show. They hadn't even put a record out. You know, I think they'd come over to do a couple of shows. I think they'd done one with Suicidal Tendencies at the Forum or something, and then this was like one of those label shows where they broke, and there was like no one there because no one knew who they were. And they were like, and we were like, wow, this is, you know, it wasn't my thing it wasn't really my thing, but it was like you could just sense there's something going on here. And, like, and then we were like hanging out with them, and the next time they came over, they were like, do you want to support us, the Underworld? And there was like, and the record had come out, or I think it was just about to come out, or just whatever, and we did that, and of course it was packed, sold out. And then they did the Word, we went on the Word, and they were like, come on the Word with us, and then like he was wearing a Fabric shirt, you know, and like,
oh, that's really cool.
So yeah, so there was, and then he hung out for like, he basically after that he didn't go back home, he stayed in London for like the whole summer.
No way.
Yeah. And he just hung out in Slam City Skates with us, and he was like, it was just like literally, he was like, right, Zach, you know, he'd go in there and you'd be hanging out. It was like, wow, it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, it's really weird.
So there wasn't a massive touring schedule for him to get.
I think they'd kind of done this initial sort of like thing, and they had a bit of time off, and he was like, when I say it was the summer, it was probably like, you know, like a month or something, but he decided he was going to spend a bit of time here. So yeah, we just he was like a regular fixture around for a while. Yeah, it's funny.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a Beastie Boys show
That was another one. Yeah, that was the same sort. That was about the same time. Maybe a little bit after that actually, but it was like it was that because like Slam City Rough Trade. I don't know if anyone remembers in Covent Garden.
Upstairs, downstairs.
Upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah.
So like there was a lot of crossover stuff with clothing and labels. At that time, there was always like loads of labels were doing clothing. Like Sonic, Kim Gordon had X Girl. Yeah. You know, and there was like. All the skate stuff had like crossover stuff with bands and stuff. It was very much the same thing, and then so like, and because Gary Ouija, he had put out DJ Hurricane record, which was the guy from the Beastie Boys, and there was the connections were all there, and then they were like, we're going to do a little show on a Sunday down in the basement of Rough Trade.
No way! That was so tiny down there.
Yeah, and then it was invite only, obviously. And of course we were all given invites, and it turned out it was Tony's birthday that day, so we all got dressed up in suits. We went down to this Beastie Boys show, and it was fucking ridiculous. It was like so ridiculous. It was unbelievable, and like it was like sabotage. Like you know, I remember them doing Sabotage, and it was so raw. It was just like unbelievable. And it was the first time people had heard it, and then people were just like, you could see people like losing their minds in this tiny little place. And anyway, like, and we were wearing these suits, and I can't remember if it was like MCO Ad Rock or one of them came up and was chatting to us, and he was like, "We love the suits, man. These are cool." Yeah. And then they're on the MTV Awards like 2 weeks later, wearing exactly the same suits, like very similar suits. Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Did you say that somebody recorded it, or it's on YouTube somewhere?
It surfaced a couple of years ago. It was on like what's the site that was more for film photos. It's just on
like
online.
A Vimeo thing.
It's a Vimeo. It might be Vimeo, but it was Flickr or something like that.
Okay.
It's one of those sites, but it popped up on there, and someone had filmed the whole thing in there, and then put it up. And as it pans around, you can see me going like this in the corner.
Wow.
Popping away.
History.
Yeah.
Some proper historic gigs there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Is it Fugazi in front of the Whitehouse?
Fugazi. Oh, that was in the States. I went to that. Yeah, that's funny enough. My wife was there as well, but we didn't know each other at the time. She was studying in Baltimore, and there was a Fugazi gig outside. Well, after the first Gulf War, it was about 92, 91, 92, around that time, and I'd gone over there because that was the other thing. I was so obsessed with music coming out of DC, and especially the Discord label. It was like a big thing for me at the time. And one day I was like, I'm going to the States. I was like, my dad's like, what? I was like, yeah. I'm like, who are you going with? I'm going my own. And like, I've spoken to some people on the phone, and they said I can stay. And I was like, literally, I was like, okay. And I was like, so I went, and I'd stayed there, and I ended up staying in this house called Positive Force, which was a big hub of all those bands and stuff. And they used to put on these like all these like amazing benefit shows. That whole scene basically made me what I am today. It was like the way they did stuff. It was all inspirational. It was all done for the right reasons. It was like, there was no sort of we're rock stars, let's check us all out. It was all very honest and very amazingly organised. And like Fugazi were obviously the big band of the scene, and they did this thing outside the Whitehouse after the first Gulf War with a banner that says there will be 2 wars, because obviously that was the first one, and they knew there was going to be a second one. And it was a very kind of like amazing. It was freezing cold. It was raining. It was like I don't even know how they played. It was so cold, and it was sort of like damp all over the place. But like you could see people's breath, and it was like amazing. And it was like that was kind of like one of those ones you're just like, wow, I'm so glad I was there for that. That was amazing.
Did that catapult you into really pushing hard at what you wanted to do when you came back?
That scene when I came back from there was almost like I was supercharged. I was like, oh my god, you cannot believe this.
People are doing this.
I literally I was seeing bands like all the time I was there, and I was hanging out with them, and then I was staying in their houses, and there was a real kind of like amazing ethic to get things like messages out there, and like it was very political, because Washington DC is a political environment. And so everything they did was like feed the homeless, help the homeless, like just awareness of political issues or whatever, and yeah, that place was super inspirational for me. And the bands coming out there were like incredible. They were like, there was like every week there was like something new happening there, and it's that thing where it's just like it burnt so bright for like a couple of years, and then it just went, you know, it will never happen again. You know, it's like, I guess it was that sort of thing that happened in Seattle that way, but it was like that was more created by a media than what was actually happening there.
Yeah.
But what was happening in DC was literally just happening. It's crazy. Yeah, amazing times. Very amazing times.
Wow. Well, man.
Right.
Well, that was great. That was great. Thanks for sharing
very much.
It's all right. I didn't bore you too much.
Oh no, man, not at all.
Waffling on.
No, not
waffle stomping on. No, that was great, man.
Cool.
That's, as it says, that.
That is a wrap.